Hey guys, Rick Stone here from the blog Our Stoney Acres and the online gardening school. Welcome to 5 Minute Fridays, my video series where I try and give you a valuable gardening tip in 5 minutes or less. Before we get started this week, please make sure that you subscribe to my YouTube channel, or if you're watching this on Facebook, make sure you like my Stoney Acres Facebook page. All right, this week we're in studio because it's cold outside still, and I didn't feel like going outside to film today. I'm going to have a hard time keeping this 1 to 5 minutes, just a warning for you. I had a question this week that created kind of a thread on my Facebook page that I felt like needed a video response, and I needed to take a few minutes to explain a few things to you guys. And it was about cross-pollination. So the question was, I planted 4 or 5 different varieties. So they had summer squash and acorn squash and spaghetti squash and zucchini, all in the same area of their garden. And the question was, how do I keep them from cross-pollinating? Last year I had acorn squash that was more like spaghetti squash, and I had funny zucchini and it tasted funny and things like that. And so the question was, how can I keep cross-pollination from happening to prevent those plants from cross-pollinating and ruining the fruit? Okay. So, short and sweet of this video is, cross-pollination does not affect this year's fruit. Okay, I'll say that again. Cross-pollination does not affect this year's fruit. Period. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about cross-pollination, and I'll explain to you how it works so that you'll understand that it doesn't affect this year's fruit. So basically, simple, sweet and simple, cross-pollination is the pollen from a pumpkin gets transferred to a zucchini, okay, by a bee usually, and so cross-pollination then has occurred. And in that situation, because a pumpkin and a zucchini are in the same species, the seed can actually be fertilized, okay? And so the seeds will contain the genetic material of both parents, the pumpkin and the zucchini, okay? But now let's take a look at a zucchini flower. Okay, so this is a zucchini flower just before it opens up. See what's behind the flower? That's a zucchini, right? That's a baby zucchini. And the genetic material that determined what kind of fruit was going to grow on that plant came from the seed that was planted this year. Okay, it didn't come from the seeds that are inside the fruit. Okay. So the genetic material that of the two parents in cross-pollination is in the seed. And so that will affect next year's plant. So if you take the seed from that cross-pollination event and plant it next year, you'll get some kind of pumpkin zucchini cross. And it may or may not be viable. It may or may not produce fruit. You just don't know. But it's next year that's affected, because the genetic material from the pumpkin that gets into the zucchini is in the seed. It's not in the fruit. The fruit was already there, and the type of fruit that was going to be grown on that plant was determined genetically by the seed you planted. Okay? So that's how cross-pollination works. So if you have funky looking fruit in your garden and it's not cross-pollination that caused it, then what caused it? Okay? So there's one of two things that can happen. Number one, you may have planted a bad seed. Okay, I'm not going to discount the fact that you can have crossed seeds. Now, that's especially true if you're growing and saving your own seeds. Okay, it's harder for us to be careful and do proper distances and things like that when we're saving our own seed in a small garden environment. So there's a real possibility that you have a crossed seed that you planted that was one that you saved yourself. But if you bought your seeds commercially, chances are it's not cross-pollinated. Now, I'm not going to discount the fact that there can be mistakes made, okay? But commercial growers, their reputation's on the line, and they're doing everything possible to prevent cross-pollination. They're distances, they're bagging things, and so the chance of cross-pollination from a commercially grown seed is, organic or not organic, is relatively low, okay? Not impossible, but pretty slim chances. So if you didn't plant a bad seed, then why did you have zucchini colored butternut squash? Or why were your acorn squashes stringy like spaghetti squash? Okay? And the reason why is almost for sure going to be some type of environmental stress. Okay? So let's talk about the different types of environmental stress, and you need to think about what happened in your garden that year that might have caused that, because it wasn't caused by cross-pollination. Okay? So what was your weather like? Did you have an exceptionally hot year or maybe an exceptionally cool year? Either one of those may have caused stress on the plant, which that stress will produce poor fruit. Okay? What about your soil? What's your soil like? When was the last time you amended it with organic material, compost, or something else that was good and healthy for the soil? When was the last time you had a soil test done to see what your minerals are like and to see if anything's lacking? That's the next thing that you need to check, because soil deficiencies will cause problems with your zucchini and your pumpkins. All of those things will be funky because of soil deficiencies. And while we're on soil, let's talk about diseases. Do you have any diseases that are prevalent in your area? Both bacterial and viral diseases will cause stress to the plant, which will then produce poor fruit. So even if it doesn't kill the plant, if it comes along later in the season, that stress, the plant trying to fight that off, will give you poorer quality fruit. And then also pests can do the same thing. So has your plant been attacked all year by squash bugs or aphids or something like that? Fighting off all of that damage means that the plant is putting more resources into that damage than it is the fruit, and it will cause poor quality fruit. The last thing, environmental thing that may cause poor quality fruit is herbicides. So did you use some herbicides in your yard this year? And is it possible that they drifted over onto your squash plant? Or did your neighbors use some herbicides that possibly drifted over? Not enough that it killed the plant, but maybe it damaged it enough that it stressed it. So all of those environmental things are always going to be the cause of problems with your fruit, okay? So it's not cross-pollination. So you need to look deeper and you need to look closer at what's going on in your garden. One other cross-pollination discussion maybe that we can have is even within, so I've been talking today about squashes, okay, and they're part of the cucurbit family, and there's actually a bunch of plants that fall into that group. So cucumbers, watermelon, all of the musk melons, cantaloupes and crenshaws and things like that. And then you have the C. bepo group, or botanical species, which that's where your squashes all land. Gourds and squashes and zucchini and all of those land in that group, okay? But each one of those is a specific botanical species within the family cucurbit, okay? And I'm probably saying that word wrong, I'm sorry. And so you can't have a cucumber cross with a pumpkin because they're different species. That's like saying a cat and a dog can have a baby together. Okay? They can't. It's not genetically possible. So a cucumber can't cross with a watermelon, and a watermelon can't cross with a cantaloupe, and a cantaloupe can't cross with a squash. Okay? All the way up and down the line, that happens. So you've got those species, and I'm being even a little oversimplified there in the different species that are in that family. Okay? So you can't have cross-pollination even between species. So never can you have a cucumber that's crossed with your butternut squash and caused you to have a funny butternut squash, because they're not the same species. Now, you can have a pumpkin squash with a butternut squash, or cross with a butternut squash, because that's like a greyhound dog having a baby with a German Shepherd, right? They're both dogs, okay? But a German Shepherd can't have a baby with a cat, and a cucumber can't have a baby with a pumpkin, okay? So that's how it works. So you need to watch all of that kind of stuff, because that's a myth, okay? And something else is wrong in your garden if you're having funky fruit. It's not cross-pollination. Almost always that's the case, okay? So there you go. There's my lecture for the week, and sorry it was a little bit long. I will say there is one exception to this, though. There's one vegetable that cross-pollinates and affects this year's crop, and that's corn, okay? Sweet corn in particular. But think about it. What are you eating when you eat sweet corn? You're eating the seed, right? Okay, so there's a whole series of things that I can talk to you about sweet corn, but just know that sweet corn can cross-pollinate with field corn, popcorn, other sweet corns, and it can ruin the sweet corn in the current year, okay? So you have to watch out for that a little bit. But and I'll put a link to a post that explains the corn situation a little bit more. Also down in the description is a written post about this topic that includes some resources for you, including several articles out to agricultural universities that tell you the exact same thing that I told you in this video. This year's fruit cannot be affected by this year's cross-pollination. Does not happen, okay? So if you have funny fruit, it's for some other reason. Please figure out what that reason is, okay? All right, let me have it. I know there's going to be some haters out there. It doesn't matter how convincing the argument. There are some people who still believe the myth and believe that cross-pollination is affecting this year's fruit. So let me have it. I can take it. Please leave comments. Give me a thumbs up if you like this video. Make sure that you like my YouTube page and that you like my Stoney Acres page as well on Facebook. And that's all I have for this week. I hope you enjoyed the video. Everybody have a fantastic week and happy gardening.